The Four Knights of the Apocalypse, Chapter 103, Into the Demon Realm.
And we begin by seeing Mortlach, accompanied by the other 6 Chaos Knights chosen by Ironside, all with very peculiar armor and looking intimidating, and from higher ground, they were waiting for the 4 Knights of Prophecy and their companions, who would pass through that strange place to get to Delmari before sunset, so they could appear at any moment. And to make sure of their position, one of the Chaos Knights called Brakla, who pulls out from somewhere I don't even want to know, a kind of bezel, a magical tool given to him by King Arthur, which allows him to see and hear everything clearly from 10 miles away. And in this way, he is able to spot the 4 Knights of Prophecy and their companions. However, he quickly notices something strange, because the woman who was in front of them was the demon Ioladio, and he immediately questions what she was doing with them. And Mortlach asks him to be attentive to her actions or words. And in that instant Percival, still curious, was asking Ioladio how she knew him, and if they had met before. And Ioladio turns to Percival and asks if he really doesn't remember anything, which would be a shame, because he, according to Ioladio, is adored by everyone, and with zero jealousy, and presses Percival, asking if he in fact doesn't remember such a beautiful girl? But the boy replies that he has lived alone with his grandfather on God's finger for 16 years. But this doesn't convince, and, because according to her, Ioladio doesn't seem to be lying. And the young boy believes that it may have been he who taught her to speak the language of the demons. But soon everyone's attention turns to what seemed to be a gate carved in stone, which according to Ioladio herself was the beginning of the road that would lead them to the kingdom of demons. However, Cain is very angry and says that this is not the beginning of anything, but a dead end, that it will take them nowhere, and he accuses Ioladio of having tricked them all. But Donnie believes that there might be some kind of trick. But Io was quite calm about this, and suddenly she asks Percival to press his hands against the face of that rock, and as he does so, Percival's hand simply disappears, as if he were going through a portal. And when he sees this, not only Percival, but his friends too, are terrified, because his arm has simply gone through the rock. But for Gawain, this was nothing more than an illusion, which hid the passage. And suddenly Percival was already more than half of his body inside that portal. And the other side, to Percival's eyes, was impressive. The boy tells that there was a spiral road in the endless underground. And now that almost everyone was already on the other side, they began to measure how big and high it was. However, the Cain still had his doubts as to whether it would really take them to the Underworld. However, he suddenly has an outburst and starts to say that it makes no sense for them to go to the demon realm, because where they really want to go is Camelot. Meanwhile, Ioladio reveals that there is a road in the Underworld that leads to Camelot. She further tells him that there might be other roads, but that she doesn't know of any other than the one in the demon realm. And so, this was the only option, but there was another concern, mainly for the nations, how far down they would need to go. And seeing this, Gawain suggests that if they don't want to go down walking, why don't they jump? See if you can, even Lancelot didn't like this joke. But that path was not only long, but also very narrow, making it very difficult for Sylvan, Anne's horse, and also for Escaner, which was the name of Tristan's horse. And they could not leave them behind, and it is then that the Donnie comes into action. The boy asks them not to worry, because he will take care of it. And so they all begin their descent. Lancelot, transformed into a fox, asks everyone to watch their steps and always look forward, and never down. Cain, on the other hand, doesn't think it's fair for Isolde to go hand in hand with Tristan. Wyland fights with nations, asking the boy not to walk with his eyes closed. And Gawain was just fine. But the Lancelot was worried about Donnie, and asked him to also focus on his steps, because the boy was barely able to look where he was stepping, as he was trying to keep his focus and concentration, as much as he could, to levitate the two horses with his magic. And they were enjoying this moment. After all, not everyone can fly this way. But Donnie gets angry, and asks them both to stand still, because it was the first time he had ever moved two things at the same time. To the dismay of the knights and Anne, who questions whether she can really trust him to do this. But Donnie doesn't moralize, as he was trying to keep his concentration. But in the face of all the difficulty he was having, he concludes that he really needs to become stronger, not only for himself, but for Jade as well. And Lancelot was reading his thoughts and happy for what he heard. But soon Lancelot's attention turns to Tristan, who was apologizing to him. The boy again blames himself, saying that if he hadn't been so useless, Jade wouldn't have lost his life, and none of them would have had to go through that. And Lancelot would be able to return to Benwick to see his mother and father again. But when he finishes listening to all this, Lancelot lets out a curse, and says that Tristan is an overly self-conscious prince. And Isolde agrees with Lancelot. She tells Tristan that everyone is there because they have chosen to be there. And that he has done nothing wrong, and that she is sure that Jade would say the same thing. And Anne also confirms, saying that they all share the same thought. Entering Camelot and stopping King Arthur, Nations goes on to say. And the Donnie, for his part, said, "You can tell we're all in the same boat, can't you, Percival?" And out of nowhere, simply out of nowhere, Percival then shouts, "We're in the same boat." And faced with this unusual attitude, Lancelot ends up saying that he is the only guy he will never understand, but the boy retorts, saying that he believed that this was the name of a special attack. And after this little embarrassment, they finally managed to see the light at the end of that cave. That was the limit, the border between the human and the demon realms. But before they cross the border, Gawain signals that two problems will arise when entering the demon realm. The first, the miasma that exists in the underworld. The dark miasma that fills the demon realm from its very beginning, a dark force that will eat away the body and the spirit of anyone who is not a demon. Then Gawain asks if they can imagine what would happen to a human who plunged into it. And while Donnie and Nations imagine the obvious, Percival in turn imagines a Capiroto version of Percival. And Io comments saying that this is indeed true and asks forgiveness for his carelessness. However, not all was lost, for Tristan promises that he will take care of it. He asks Io to step back a little. And by making a few movements and signs with his hands, the boy invokes his magic, the divine cloak. A magic of light that involves all his companions, who are fascinated by that cozy celestial power. And Gawain in turn recognizes that magic, the protection of sacred light. And she asks Tristan if he can make it last for at least one day. However, unfortunately the boy ends up saying that that protection magic will only last for 6 hours. But that if it were his mother, it would certainly last a whole week. And for this he gets a tug of ear from Gawain, who asks him to train more. But she had mentioned two problems, so Percival is curious to know what the second one is. And Gawain is direct in answering. The four races, including demons and humans, have shared a mutual hatred for over 3,000 years, so how do you think they will receive us, the humans who are invading their kingdom? And Ioladius once again confirms that indeed there are still demons who bear a grudge against the four races. So she understands and respects the right of those who don't want to go. But the Lancelot is the first to speak up, saying that he doesn't mind this, and that he wishes to go as soon as possible. But the Donnie doesn't approve of this stance very well, saying that he might hesitate for a while. Quite different from Percival, who fully agrees with Lancelot that they should all move on. And so it is done. They all cross the border into the demon realm. And inside the underworld, in the king's chambers, before his majesty, a mysterious man arrives with the following message: "We have detected the presence of some individuals beyond gate 220. And his king asks, "Who are they?" And that man answers, he doesn't know yet, but that he believes they might be some group of lost humans, or maybe they might be from the eternal realm, the ones who have been chasing and attacking the demon clan recently. And faced with this situation, he asks his king how we should proceed, Demon King. And then we can finally see Zeldris, with a much more intimate and mature appearance, shrouded by darkness, very similar to the assault mode of his brother Meliodas. The current king of the underworld then gives his orders: capture and bring them here immediately. Percival and his companions enter the demon realm, but are approached by the king of the underworld, Zeldris. Continued in the next chapter, entitled The Invasion of the Underworld.